Okay, well, my name is Eliezer Papo. Doctor is not part of the name, I suppose. I'm teaching here Hebrew literature, but not only Hebrew literature, also folklore and oral literature and basically Sephardic studies, which at this university are included at the Department of Hebrew Literature. And maybe later we can discuss why is that so and where these studies are included in other Israeli universities. Well, the idea of this panel is basically I will speak for 20 minutes, then you will have 10 additional minutes to ask questions, and I'll try to answer if I can. And then later we will have two additional speakers that I will introduce later. One thing that I forgot to say about myself, I'm also Vice Director of the Moshe David Gaon Center for Ladino Culture here at Ben Gurion University. Now, the topic of my presentation this morning is Jerusalem or Madrid, where is the Mecca of Sephardic studies? But maybe before we even define where is the Mecca of Sephardic studies, maybe we should start by defining who is a Sephardi, right? Just like, the ordinary annoying question, who is a Jew? Well, the question, who is a Jew, is basically a new question. If you go to 16th century, nobody asked the question, who was a Jew? It was totally clear to Jews, Christians, and Muslims who were the Jews. If you go to 17th century, same. 18, same. So that's what the state of Israel decided. If you were considered Jewish by Hitler, you are considered as a potential Oleh Hadash by us. Now, why I'm making any relation between these two concepts, who is Jewish and who is Sephardic? Because who is Sephardic is also a halakhic issue. Who is Sephardic is a halakhic issue. But before I get to halakhic answer, maybe we should consider other possible answers. One of the obvious answers is the Ashkenazi answer. It's not too profound, as you shall see. The Ashkenazi answer to the question who is Sephardic but basically is. Whoever is not Ashkenazi, he's Sephardic. What's the question, right? So it's basically, we are speaking English, but we can switch to Hebrew, I suppose, because most of the people, I think, do speak Hebrew. So the Ashkenazi definition of Sephardic would be Mihodu ve'ad Kush sheva ve'esrim u'me'a medina. In other words, anybody who is not from Ashkenaz, he's Sephardic. Oh, so you are Chinese Jewish? Sephardic. You are Ethiopian? Sephardic. You are whatever. A Khazar tribe on Kavkaz that claims to be Jewish, well, you probably claim to be Sephardic Jewish. Obviously, you are not Ashkenazi. Okay, so this definition is not even a definition, and you should never consider it seriously. Then you would have linguocentric Ladino speakers' definition. They would say, you don't speak Ladino, you are not Sephardic. Well, there is a problem with that definition also. Maimonides never spoke Ladino, and he was obviously Sephardic, and I don't know, I'm not aware of any normal Sephardic Jew that would be ready to kick Maimonides out of the group. But then we have a problem. Most of the Jews from Spain were not Sephardic, right? They never spoke Ladino, they spoke Judeo-Arabic. So what are we supposed to do? Then if you speak modern Hebrew, you have even a bigger problem. Why? When you say in modern Hebrew, Ashkenazi, right, it refers only to Jews. Nobody would say in modern Hebrew that the president of Ashkenaz, Sarkozy, right? The chancellor of Ashkenaz, Angela Merkel. It doesn't occur to anybody. If they are Gentiles, they are French and German. If they are Jewish, they are Ashkenazi. But then when it comes to the term Sephardic, it includes everything. Rosh Memshelet Sfarad, right? Obviously not too Jewish. The Prime Minister of Spain, you would use the same adjective in Hebrew. Then you would say, Harav Rashi Sfaradi, the Sephardic chief rabbi. Wait, what does it mean, Harav Rashi Sfaradi? He's the chief rabbi of Spain? No, he's the chief rabbi of Israel. Oh, where is he from? Well, the present one is from Morocco, part of Spain, obviously. And the previous one, Rav Bakshi Doron, was from Persia, right? Iran. which was always a province in Spain. So what's happening? What's going on? And when you think of it, I mean, come on, these are very simple things. We should all know the answers. Well, the answer is, again, just like many times in Jewish history, the answer, again, is in synagogue. Traditionally speaking, Sephardic is anybody who prays the Sephardic rite. Sephardic is anybody who follows the halakha the way it was defined by Spanish, whether these are Judeo-Arabic or whether these are or whether these are Judeo-Spanish-speaking rabbis. But the way the halakha was formed and shaped and designed in Spain, if you ascribe to it, you are halakhically Sephardic. That's why most of the Oriental Jews, halakhically speaking, they are Sephardic. Why? Because they follow halakha the way it was defined by Rif, by Rambam, and later by Rabbi Yosef Karo in Shulchan Aruch, the big letters. While the Ashkenazim follow the small letters in Shulchan Aruch, right? In terms, whenever there is a case of collision, of contradiction. So, once we have defined who the Sephardim are halakhically, now we have to return to science, to academic research and to academic narrative. Academically speaking, if we say that Sephardim are all those people who follow the halakha, the way, right, then we are not saying much. So basically what's going on today in the science is we are, even though we are aware that most of the Oriental Jews see themselves as Sephardic, rightly so, in scientific terms, we define two different communities, the Oriental community and the Ladino-speaking community. And then Ladino-speaking community would be what we refer to when we say Sephardic studies. Now, Ladino-speaking community inherited entire Iberian Jewish heritage, just like the Oriental Jews inherited. But they took it in different direction. So you have Iberian Jewish heritage, right, which switches into two directions, the Oriental one and the Ladino one. Now, it might be much easier if you were to say Oriental Jews and Ladino Jews, and they are all Sephardic. But there is a problem. If you use in science the term Ladino, many Americans don't differentiate between Ladino and Latino. Then you are in a problem. You remember there was a Secretary of State which said that he's so sorry he didn't learn Latin better because he could speak in America Latina, he could speak with them. So in such a world, dominated by such a knowledgeable superpower, you don't really have options but to define yourself better. And then there is another problem. Ladino is a language which also developed from... there is another Ladino, not only Jewish Ladino. I know we are ethnocentric and self-in-love and self-obsessed and everything. We should recognize that there is another community that speaks different language called by the same name. In Italy, there is a Ladino-speaking community, but their Ladino is not ours Ladino. So the only way out was Oriental Jews and Sephardic Jews. Sephardic Jews in stricto sensu, in strict sense of the word. Okay, now let's see what's going on today in Israel, and then we shall compare it with what's going on in Spain. In Israel, in 1969, they have created the Ben Tzvi Institute. In 1969. Consequently, this institute doesn't differentiate between the non-Ashkenazim. This institute goes by definition, you are not from Poland. Oh, you must be Sephardic. So even the journal that they publish is called Rivon Ben Tchumi Lecheker Keilot Israel B'Mizrach. And then it includes anything. It includes Cochin and it includes Kurdistan. It includes Spain, and since when Spain is on the east, but whatever. And then it doesn't include, obviously, the Eastern Europe, because Eastern Europe was never part of the East, and so on and so on and so on. This was 1969. In 1972, They were already, I mean, only 3 years passed. And they were already aware that we are basically speaking of two bulks, of two chunks. But they should go together. So Hebrew University established the Center for Research and Study of Sephardic and Oriental Jewish Heritage. Now, can you imagine a center for a study of Ashkenazi and Ethiopian Jewish heritage? I'm not saying that the difference between the Oriental and Sephardic is so big. But come on, these are two groups. Recognize it. For God's sake, that's not such a big deal. Well, whatever. In 1996, the Parliament of Israel finally recognized that we are speaking of different groups. And just like usually, if these are different groups, then we should prefer the European one and neglect the other one. So two national authorities were created, one for Yiddish and another for Ladino. And then, you know, Judo-Arabic, who needs that? So in 1996, the State of Israel, the Parliament of the State of Israel established basically two national authorities, one for Ladino and another for Yiddish. But this is a democracy. So ever since, different groups started organizing, or started passing the laws, or organizing lobbying groups to have other authorities. Now, we are in Israel, we know the country, right? So many very interesting developments happen there because you have Yiddish, big group. Ladino, big group. Then you have a national authority for the culture of Jews of Libya. Only Libya. Then national authority for the Jews of Egypt. National authority for the Jews of Bukhara. Why? Because every single group said, well, if they can, we can. And then, okay, so personally, but who cares what I think? Personally, I think we should have full. We should have one for Judo-Arabic, one for Yiddish, one for Ladino, and one for everybody else. And this would be because you can't really have additional 15. Come on. Judaism of Libya goes with Judo-Arabic speaking community. That's part of that community. Together with Morocco and Tunisia and Syria and Egypt and whatever. But the previous Minister of Culture and Sport decided this wasn't the way to go. We should abolish everything and then we should establish one, which would be called National Authority for Jewish Heritage. And then it would include everything. While now these national authorities have a budget of 1,500,000 shekels or million shekels, this one, the big one, would have 100 million. But it would deal with everything, and then the government of Israel wouldn't have to deal with culture anymore. So this law passed first reading first voting in the Knesset. We don't know what's going to happen. But that's not the subject of our morning talk. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Israel did recognize that we are speaking of different groups. Then in 2004, a center here was established at Ben-Gurion University, which was called Moshe David Gaon Center for Ladino Culture. Right? That's the way we are called in Hebrew, Moshe David Gaon Center, Letarbut HaLadino. And then in English, we are called Moshe David Gaon Center for Sephardic Culture, not for Ladino. Because of two reasons I said, right? But in Hebrew, we say, okay, we can afford, everybody understands in Hebrew that Ben-Gurion University wouldn't open a center for a Christian-speaking community in southern Italy, in northern Italy. Then the following year, Salti Center was opened was established at Bar-Ilan University. So basically today we have two centers that are dealing specifically with this community. Each of them has a scientific journal. Ours at Ben-Gurion is called El Presente, which is basically two things. It's also El Presente like present, right, like matana, and it's El Presente like present, continuous tense, right, like the present time, hove. Because we are trying to say that the language might be dying, but the culture is not. So we want to speak not only about the past or about the future, rather we would like to concentrate on its present. Okay. Now what's going on in Spain? In Spain, for many years, they have had, and they still do, a thing called Consejo Superior de Investigación Científica, the High Council of Scientific Research. Within this scientific body, they have since always had Sephardic studies and biblical studies and Hebraic studies. What's Hebraic studies? Anything that's not Bible and that's not Sephardic goes there. So as early as 1941, they've established a journal called Sepharad. It's very prestigious. Unfortunately, at Ben Gurion, people are not aware of it, but it's a very prestigious journal. And recently, a few years ago, the Spanish government established a thing, I call it a thing, a thing called Casa Israel Sefarad. Now, it doesn't make any sense as far as Spanish grammar is concerned. You need some kind of preposition. It should be Casa de Israel y Sefarad. Casa de Sefarad y Israel. Whatever. But Casa Sefarad Israel doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean a thing. But this was a political solution, and politicians and education, politicians and grammar don't always go together. Why was this a political solution? The Spanish government have had for many years Casa de Americas, which is basically an additional embassy. They have embassy in Argentina, they have embassy in Peru, they have embassy in Chile, but they have embassy for entire America Latina. It's more cultural embassy, but it is embassy. Why? Because the person in charge of that is as a diplomat. And then they have Casa Árabe, which was, they have embassy in Egypt, an embassy in Syria, an embassy in Lebanon, but they have also one embassy which represents Spain towards Arabs as a nation. Then they wanted to have a Jewish house, Casa Judía. But then the pro-Arab elements in Spanish parliament were against. Then they said, well, let's call it Casa Sefarad. Nobody in Spain can be against it. It's not politically correct to be against it. So then the Israelis who were behind this, because this was also a part of a bigger cooperation between Israel and Spain. Israelis said, come on, I'm an Israeli businessman and I'm Ashkenazi. Why should I help you establish relations, in a framework of thing called Casa Sefarad? Who cares? I couldn't care less. So they said, oh, okay, let's call it Casa Sefarad Israel. No comment. In any case, this body, once Spain had money, which now should be presented in past time, we don't know whether it's past continuous or it's only past, simple past. But all the way they had money, this institution was given a lot of it, and they really done some things. No, they didn't really done some things. They really supported many things. They really gave financial means to things. Now, there are additional interesting developments. Basically, the question I've posted in the title of the lecture, whether Sephardic studies, where is the Mecca of Sephardic studies, in Spain or in Israel, Jerusalem or Madrid? For years, these two countries were actually fighting for who is the legitimate researcher, representative, and spokesman of the Sephardic community. Spain said, come on, these people are defined by Spanish language. They are part of our culture, they are part of our heritage. And Israel said, come on, these people are Jewish. Israel and Spain both forgot. Spain forgot that these people were kicked out of Spain in 1492. And meanwhile, they were not just homeless, waiting on the Spanish airport to be allowed to re-enter. They lived someplace. In Greece, in Bulgaria, in Turkey, in Serbia, in Bosnia, in Albania. Right? In Vienna. At least when Vienna was Turkish. No, and even later. No, Vienna was never Turkish, but Turks got up to Vienna. But in any case, this is totally neglecting the community itself. This approach they are Jews, so the Mecca of their studies should be in Israel. Or they are speaking Judeo-Spanish, the Mecca. This is neglecting totally the community, but there was a reason. Why there was a reason? Because this is quite passive community. It's an easygoing passive community which doesn't make a lot of noise. And then, when Moshe David Gaon Center was created, and when we have entered the Israeli stage of Sephardic studies and the international stage of Sephardic studies, we have had a problem. For example, you come to a place, to a place as World Congress of Jewish Sciences, right? World Congress of Jewish Sciences. A very interesting autistic institution, because over there you have Jews speaking to Jews about Jews. Very sexy. And then when we entered the thing, our field was, to start with, was a bit different, because if we had 20 researchers to come, 5 to 6 were Spanish Catholics. And this wasn't normal for Ashkenazi studies. You didn't have, if 100 people come, you didn't have 10 of them or 50 of them Polish, Ukrainian or Russian Christians. Obviously not. But when we entered, what I forgot to say was I was born in Sarajevo, right? In present Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, or what used to be Yugoslavia. By the way, the last institution in the world that has the name of Yugoslavia in it is the Association of Yugoslavian Jews in Israel. That's okay. So we entered the scene, and there is no recognition. There is no such a field. There is no such a scientific field as Sephardic studies within the Jewish sciences. Why? There are biblical studies, and then, those few unimportant Sephardim who wrote commentaries on Bible, such as Rabbi David Kamchi, Abraham Ibn Ezra, and Abravanel, and Arama, and 95% of of people who ever wrote any commentaries on Bible, but they are in biblical studies. Right? Then there are Hebrew language studies, and then, those Sephardim that... And then we said, no. We want to have Sephardic studies. We don't want to have this scattered all over. So that was the first revolution we made. On the first Congress that we helped organize the section of Sephardic studies, we insisted that everything that has to do... we insisted that anything that has to do with Sephardic studies should be under the same umbrella. On the next... this is Jewish Olympics. So it happens every 4 years. So the next time... we brought more than half non-Jewish researchers. And then I was called by the secretary of the Congress, and he tells me, you have sent me 2 titles with no name. I say, what does that mean? He says, here is Muhammad Nezirovich something, right? But who is speaking? I say, Muhammad Nezirovich is speaking. He says, in Jewish Congress? I say, yes, he's a researcher. He's a researcher of Roman languages and literatures. He speaks Judeo-Spanish because he was born in Jewish neighborhood in Sarajevo. He's a good friend of mine, but that's not the matter. And he speaks about Jewish subject. So he says, are you sure? I say, yes, definitely. I say, okay, whatever. 15 minutes later, I receive another call. Another person was, reviewing the documents, and the same thing. He's speaking about this Muhammad Nezirovich, but who is speaking? Who is the speaker? And so on. Ever since the things have changed, we have developed relations with different Balkan universities, helping them develop local researchers who are capable and able of conducting local studies, including the Jews. They don't have to be Judeo-centric. They don't have to be they don't have to specialize in Judaism. But if you are a historian of art in Belgrade, and if you attend few intensive courses and read 5 books and 100 articles, you get the instruments to deal with local Jewish heritage. And you know what? Much better instruments to deal with local Jewish heritage. Because if we are supposed here in Israel to develop a scientist able of going to Serbia and recognizing what's Jewish and what's Serbian and what's Austrian and what's Bulgarian in Serbian Jewish art, come on. This takes 40 years to give the person everything he needs, all the languages and all the cultural background and everything. But if you pick somebody from there and you just add him the Jewish thing, right, then he's able and capable and okay. So the question we have posted to ourselves and to Ben Gurion University and to other universities in Israel and to the Council of Higher Education in Israel and to the organizers of the World Congress of Jewish Sciences was a very simple question. Do you have to be English to be an expert in Shakespeare? You don't. You can be Argentinian, you can speak English with very bad Latino accent, and you can still be an expert in Shakespeare. You don't have to convert to Judaism or to be born Jewish to be expert. If this is science, obviously. If this is a tribal culture, we have to have some kind of initiation rite, right? But if this is a science, then anybody can do it. So, basically, we have had in the last 10 years, and there is no reason to be too modest. Yes, the Gaon Center played a huge role in changing of climate in Israel and in the international community, and I will just add one additional example of what we did. And it's not to make an advertisement for ourselves, but just to show you that basically, you know, sometimes when they teach you stuff and they say, you know, Ben Gurion and proclaim the state and this and that, and you say, yeah, I'm finishing. These people lived in happy times when if you had a vision, you could do things. Well, these times were never finished, right? So if you have a vision, you can do anything in any field. But to summarize, people were speaking about Ladino as if it was Akkadian, as if it was, you know, the old Assyrian. So there were many articles about it, no articles in it. So we have started a journal, and then we proclaimed that in this journal you can publish articles in Ladino, about Ladino, because, come on, the community didn't die out. We aren't speaking of Assyrians. These are living people. Ever since, this became a rule. Today, you can't have a Congress in Sephardic Studies which doesn't admit papers and later articles in Judeo-Spanish. So basically, these are the informations I wanted to share with you. The punchline is, fortunately, there is no Mecca of Sephardic Studies, and there shouldn't be one. It's science. There are no Meccas for sciences. Meccas are for religions. Sciences are, by definition, multi-tutti-frutti, right? Multi-polycentric and so on. So there is no Mecca. We are not striving to be one. We are helping to develop as many Meccas as possible. Thank you. Questions?
Comments, questions?
Should we do that in the end?
Maybe we'll just...
Yeah, we can continue with the other papers and then...
Okay. So our second speaker is Aya Shoshan, right? That's what's written here. Ben Gurion University of the Negev. The title of her speech is In Search for Alternative Representation, Democracy and International Relations Between Recent Social Movements in Spain and in Israel. Aya Shoshan holds a BA in Ethics, Politics and Economics from Yale University, look at this, and is currently writing her master thesis at the Department of Politics and Government at Ben Gurion University. She is studying perceptions and practices of democracy as manifested in social movements through a comparative research of the 2011 Indignados movement in Spain and the Israeli social justice protests. Her talk is titled In Search for Alternative Representation, as I said, Democracy and International Relations of Recent Social Movements in Spain and in Israel.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm happy to have this opportunity to share with you some of my very initial thoughts for research. As Eliezer said, I'm